Hello, welcome all. Today we are going to talk about open source database ecosystem on ARM. As you may be already aware, databases are quite widely used all over industry, and open source databases are quite popular in the database segment. Something which has started gaining traction in the recent time frame is running all these open source database on ARM. And not only the database, along with the database, the ecosystem which supports the database is also being now ported or being run on ARM. So we'll try to understand what is the status of different open source databases and their ecosystem on ARM. So let's get started. My name is Krunal Bauskar. I have been driving the DB on ARM initiative. So that's quick intro about me. I have been working in MySQL space for more than a decade now. Currently, I'm working with Huawei as part of the DB on ARM initiative. In past, I've worked with Percona, MySQL Oracle, Yahoo Labs, Teradata, and lots such other organizations. I do blog, that's my blogging site, and I do present at most of the leading MySQL conferences, FOSDEM, Percona Live, Mariadb Fest, OSI, and all. With that quick intro about me, let's talk about our today's agenda. We will first try to see the growing popularity of ARM in HPC world. Then we'll talk about ARM and databases. And we'll try to see what is the status of leading open source databases and their ecosystem. And we'll end it out with a future direction. So we all know ARM is quite popular in all over industry. Now, especially in mobile segment, it is market leader, or for that matter, home appliances. Again, it has a pretty good share. Even on the infotainment or automobile space, it has pretty good market share. With high performance computing, it is something which has started to gain traction of running high performance computing softwares on ARM. And thanks to the low cost of ownership that ARM has to offer, and better performance for the lower cost and more cores, which in terms means more compute power that software can use for producing better throughput. Not only that, the ecosystem as such is growing. Almost all leading OS provider now offer their ports for ARM. Interest in terms of user interest is growing. Developers are also contributing. A lot of new gen developers who have already been familiar with ARM in some way or other way as part of their educational project are joining the mainstream. So this all is helping grow the ARM ecosystem. Now, what something has changed in recent past is easy availability of ARM resources, and those two high performance resources in form of cloud. Now, whether it's Huawei cloud or Amazon cloud or Oracle cloud, and that particular thing is also expanding with Microsoft and Google also trying to work out on some of their ARM offering. Apple have introduced M1 chip, which is based on ARM. So now the ARM has also come down to a desktop level. So overall, this particular easy availability of ARM resources is fueling these things further, with more and more user and developers trying to getting interested in running the things on ARM. As far as HPC is concerned, we expect the HPC market share of ARM to grow to 25%. So ARM will be commanding 25% of the HPC market share. All the leading open source communities have already ported their software or in process of porting their software to ARM. HPC applications, whether it's database, application server, web server, are already available on ARM. And ARM advantage is that it is no more only helping on price performance perspective. It also is scoring on compute performance perspective. We'll see some of the graphs when we talk about the database performances. But I think the mindset is changing, that ARM processors are not only meant for applications like cell phones or home appliances. They are powerful enough that the power could be harvested to run real live HPC applications. ARM and databases. So we all understand databases are compute hungry. So more computation, your compute power you can provide, most of the database will be able to use it and produce a better throughput. Now, especially database have active workload, which is user servicing, and there are a lot of background activities that are going on. So making sure that all of this goes in parallelism is very helpful, and ARM having more cores actually help best fit for this particular kind of application. Analytical database like ClickHouse, in fact, recommend having a processor or running it on a processor which has more number of cores, maybe not that powerful cores. PGSQL have parallel query feature could exploit all the cores or the additional cores of processors and give you a better throughput. Even on the MySQL Mariadb front, it could scale linearly because a lot of background tasks which MySQL Mariadb has to take care of could be completed because of the extra compute power that is available. So overall, it is very best fit. I would say ARM processors are very best fit for the databases. But when you talk about user, now traditionally user have been running the databases in one particular setup, and if they want to move from one setup to other setup, critical application like database, now that is something when users try to think, is it right time to move my database? So typical questions that user would look for is, when I move from one setup to other setup, is my other new setup feature set complete? All the new features will be there. What about the performance? Would I gain on performance or lose on performance? Ecosystem, whether so server is only one part of the database thing, but beyond the mainline server, there are a lot of supporting component like backup, shredding solutions, clustering solutions, monitoring solutions, and all. Whether all of them are available on ARM. And what about the community support? Since we are talking about open source databases, what about the community support? So we'll try to address and we'll try to address all the four concerns of a user, and we'll try to study different open source database and their ecosystem using these four main important points. So as we all understand, these days users are not only limited to one database or one type of database. It's very much possible that a lot of users will have a heterogeneous setup of database. OLTP, probably one or two database from OLTP, a few databases from NoSQL, a database from OLAP and all. So it is very important that when user move his setup from one particular environment to other environment, he should able to move it completely, not in parts. So making sure that all the databases from all the categories are made available on ARM is also important. And I think that heterogeneous landscape is being very well addressed with ARM ecosystem expanding beyond OLTP to even NoSQL, OLAP, and time series is getting added and all. So let's understand, or let's try to understand MySQL on ARM, MySQL being the most popular database. What is the status of MySQL ecosystem on ARM? So MySQL have been releasing packages on ARM starting 8.x. So all the features, whether it including the HA features like bin log group replications, are available on ARM. If you talk about ecosystem front, beyond the server, MySQL also releases other components like shell, which is more like an interactive shell, router from proxy category, or connectors, different kind of connectors. All of them too. Also, there is releases that comes official releases directly coming from the MySQL. So from that helps actually complete the ecosystem. If user tend to run things on ARM, then user will feel confident because all of these products, supporting products, are also coming in form of official packages. If a user want to run a full stack ecosystem on MySQL, then it is completely possible. So as you could see, beyond the mainline server, we have identified different categories or supporting components that a user tend to run. So you have HA solutions, binlog, MySQL cluster, again, inherent part of server, backup, Percona extra backup, it's community evaluated, a load balancer, we have proxy SQL routers, PMM from monitoring category, connectors already available, DB tools like Percona toolkit or shell are available. And also on the, if a user is planning to run it in Kubernetes, Docker Swarm, even those things are available. So all in all, what we could see is if a user want to run a full stack ecosystem on ARM using all open source tool, then it is completely possible. If you talk about performance, MySQL already scale better on ARM. We'll see some performance number. Community has contributed quite good number of patches, and also MySQL has started investing time in further optimizing MySQL on ARM, making it more optimal for ARM offering. So this is with MySQL 8.0.26, which is the latest GA. We have used two model. This is a cost performance model where we tend to keep the cost constant and allow resources to vary. ARM being cheaper will get more cores, and MySQL is able to make best use of these cores and produce a better throughput. So as you could see, we could see almost 2x throughputs produced by MySQL on ARM against its counterpart. So the message is very simple. For you could get better TPS for same cost. Just by moving your database to ARM, you could get better throughput for the same cost. And if you want to look it from a compute perspective, say I would like to save the cost, okay, because ARM being cheaper, let's say roughly around 50% cheaper than the counterpart, would I still, would I lose on the performance? And as you could see, with compute also, ARM processors are quite powerful. And here too, you could see that ARM ARM processors are able to produce a comparable performance against its counterpart. So compute front also, and that effectively means ARM is able to beat x86. Sorry. So that effectively means ARM is able to beat x86 even on the compute front. So the way of looking at it is, for same performance, you could get for lesser costs. So on the community front also, there is a good strong community support available, a lot of active discussions, developers, user blogs. There is a dedicated MySQL on ARM channel that is available. Mariadb on ARM. So Mariadb on ARM have official packages for Mariadb server. In fact, Mariadb was the first to come up with packages for from MySQL category on ARM. Mariadb has other supporting ecosystem tools. They are gradually making them available on ARM. Most of the popular tools are already available. The ecosystem expansion is still continues to grow. If user want to run a full stack ecosystem using Mariadb server on ARM, then it is completely possible. As you could see again, using the same way we discussed for MySQL, we have considered all the categories, and from all categories, one or two products are available for that your user can use and boot up a full stack ecosystem on ARM. Performance wise, Mariadb has done a lot of ARM specific improvements, especially scaling, and community too have contributed a lot of patches. So that actually makes it better in terms of if you look at the recent time, the QPS for Mariadb has scaled quite well, touching 1.7 million on a 4 NUMA ARM server. So I think that way performance wise, Mariadb has done amazingly good in terms of running it on ARM. So this is with Mariadb 10.6.4. Again, using the cost performance model, we could see Mariadb on ARM is able to scale better. And even with compute constant model, we could see that Mariadb on ARM is able to produce an on-par performance, thereby generating 50% saving by running the same particular for the same throughput. Community is growing stronger. Mariadb has quite active users, developers. They do report bugs. Bugs also get fixed. Mariadb corporation organizations is pretty active. They have improved distro support. Initially it was for Ubuntu and CentOS. Now it has been improved for a lot of other flavors or the versions. And there is an active community Zulip chat, which is named as Mariadb on ARM. So a lot of discussion continues to go on there related to Mariadb on ARM. So we can again summarize that Mariadb on ARM is also complete, and we can say it's in a sense it is a production ready for users to start exploring Mariadb on ARM. Percona. So Percona is another flavor offered in MySQL. It is fully compatible with upstream MySQL. It's more like a drop-in replacement with some additional features. So Percona don't have official packages yet on ARM, but it has been very widely used, evaluated by community. So we know that the Percona on ARM works, Percona server on ARM works. At least the core feature which are upstream compatible completely works. Percona has a pretty good ecosystem. It has a lot of tools like backup tools, monitoring tools, toolkits, which are used widely with even other variants of MySQL. And all of them are community evaluated, and all of them work on ARM. So even if user want to boot up a full stack ecosystem using all the open source product and majority of the Percona products, then it is possible. Again, the same way we have considered the representative products, there could be more in each category. It scales better on ARM or upstream inherited. So whatever optimizations were done in upstream, it actually has inherited all of them. So if you talk about performance, as we see on the cost performance front, ARM is able, Percona on ARM is able to beat its counterpart. And same way on the compute front, ARM is able to beat its counterpart, produce the same throughput for 50% cheaper price. ARM enjoy pretty good community support. Percona enjoy pretty good community support. In fact, it was first to get tried on ARM in early days when Raspberry Pi and all those things were common. So community was very much excited. They wanted to try, and they ported things Percona server on Raspberry Pi and tried to compile it and run it and all. PGSQL. So PGSQL or PostgreSQL is another popular database, and they do have official packages directly available from PGSQL community on ARM. As far as ecosystem is concerned, PGSQL is a pretty wide ecosystem, lot of vendors involved, lot of different tools involved. So most of them, most popular tools are already available on ARM, and that so-called ecosystem is further expanding. PGSQL made the packages available last year. After that, all the tools vendors also started offering their respective packages on ARM. So as of today, a full stack ecosystem could be booted using all open source tools on ARM. Performance wise also, PGSQL, we'll see a community has been contributing a lot of good patches. It performs better in some cases, but there are a few cases where things still needs to get addressed. So we feel that there is still some ground to be covered. So this is Pgbench. As you could see here, PGSQL on ARM is able to beat its counterpart. The blue line represent the original thing where it was going down, and a patch was contributed, which will help fix the drop down in the performance and continue to scale better than its counterpart. And this is Sysbench, a different kind of workload commonly used with MySQL. But here too, as we could see, there are, in some of the cases, it is able to scale better than its counterpart, but there are cases where it is lagging. So some of these things needs to get fixed. And that's why we say that there is a ground that needs to be covered up. PGSQL also has a good active community support. It's gaining a lot of traction. In fact, after Apple launch the M1, maybe PGSQL users are more running it on the Apple thing. So PGSQL community also want to make sure that it is available, in a proper way, or basically optimal way for all the ARM offerings. ClickHouse is from the OLAP category. So as we already said, ClickHouse would prefer to have things running on a processor which has more cores, so it could exploit parallelism. ClickHouse works on ARM. That's the official documentation says that it works on ARM, so they maintain compatibility. Of course, there are no official packages, but they recommended building directly from the sources. Ecosystem wise, also the drivers or monitoring tools and external engines, all of them are available on ARM. So if a user want to boot up a full stack ecosystem of ClickHouse using all open source tool on ARM, then that is possible. Performance wise, it scale better, and for 40% lesser cost, you get on par performance of ClickHouse compared to x86. So this is some quick insight at the performance. Load time is better with ARM. Query time is mixed. Sometime ARM scored, sometime x86 score. And make a note that here the ARM is coming at 35 to 40% lesser cost. So you still have that cost advantage for same performance or slightly better performance. Growing community, so a lot of your community users are getting interested given the nature of application that ClickHouse has. ARM is the best fit for it, so a lot of community members are getting interested, users are getting interested in running ClickHouse on ARM. So overall, I think again we can say that ClickHouse is pretty well prepared for running things on ARM, and there is quite good gaining traction. Even on performance front, it is doing well. MongoDB on ARM. So MongoDB is from NoSQL category. So MongoDB releases packages for ARM, official supported. So all the components are inbuilt, most of the things. So they will work out of box. So we can say on feature set front it is complete. Ecosystem front, majority of the supporting tools, whether it's clustering, backup, directly come from MongoDB repository, and all of them are already offered, or the packages are being released on ARM. So in that sense, also we can say it is like the ecosystem is complete. So if a user want to run a full stack ecosystem of MongoDB on ARM, then it is completely possible using all open source tools. MongoDB scale well on ARM, so it could produce on-par performance or better performance in some cases, and of course that all with a lesser cost. So if you look at some of the numbers, on the insert or read-only front, ARM lags, but on read-write front, ARM scale well, or in fact beats its counterpart, and all that is you are getting it for like 35% of the lesser cost. Community is still catching up. Usage, at least when I read, it was still limited to PI4 kind of setup. I'm sure with other databases, user trying to run other databases on HPC machines or higher end machines, user will start to run MongoDB on higher end ARM servers too. So, but that is not the end, right? So we just covered few representational database, from the category we just talked about, and the ecosystem is expanding. More and more tools are getting added. More databases are joining. So time series, which we can consider as a separate category, and altogether, the databases from that categories are being ported or on ARM. OpenGOS, which is a new database, right from start, it is being provided with ARM support and optimal support for ARM and all. So overall, the ecosystem as such of this complete open source database is expanding, and which is good because then user will have a complete heterogeneous ecosystem, and that will also establish a confidence for user to move from existing setup to ARM based setup. Future direction. So if you look at future direction, of course, we continue to work on optimizing the server, especially fixing NUMA bottleneck, because ARM is all about more NUMA nodes, and NUMA scalability has its own challenges. You're looking beyond the server. If you want to look at optimizing ecosystem tools, that's very important because tools also has to be optimal. Increasing the ecosystem coverage, getting more tools added to the ecosystem, improving the distro coverage. So as I said, the distro was initially limited, but now it has started expanding, more versions being offered, more distros being covered. Scenario based use cases, so that will generate more confidence for end user, like especially running it in clustering form or maybe HA high availability solution kind of things. That will give more confidence for end users that okay, with respect to running database on ARM. And to make a poster complete more databases on ARM, so from all category, whatever are the databases available de facto, they should be now some way with help of community we can make them available on ARM. So with that, we come to the end of the presentation. Of course, we'll throw open the session for question and answers now. And you can always write to me. You can check out the blog. We do blog about a lot of good things that happens around ARM or fixes that community is contributing. We are contributing to the database, especially MySQL and Mariadb category on ARM. And there are Slack channels dedicated MySQL on ARM, Mariadb on ARM, and there would be respective channels and forums in PGSQL and MongoDB. And I do tweet at that's my tweet handle if you would like to follow and find out more details about MySQL on ARM. Thank you so much for attending this, and we'll throw open the session now for questions and answers. Thank you.